I often see comparisons between the Pac-12 and the ACC. Yeah, it's not the same.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and so much more. Getting you ready for the season every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. A few more reactions to the Big 12 media poll. And what does Arizona State need to do to make any sort of noise? They were picked last. I'm not on board with that. All coming up on today's show. But the ACC is like the Pac-12 and the Big 12 before it, having its future survival question. And I talked earlier this week about what can come next for the ACC and how viable the league is beyond the expected departure of Florida State and Clemson, which is not guaranteed. It's presumed, it is assumed by people like myself, or prognosticated, or whatever other fancy word that you want to come up with. I think for the ACC, there are a couple of noticeable differences between itself and the Pac-12. Number one, their media rights deal is not up. This is perhaps the biggest concept that everyone's got to understand when you think about, oh, the ACC is just going to die, it's going to implode. Not that simple. The reason the Pac-12 went the way that it did was because USC and UCLA left for free at the end of those negotiations. And it's why the Mountain West, in their conversations and scheduling arrangement with the Pac-12, put in penalties if during the 2-year scheduling arrangement or in a year or two afterwards, the Pac-12 takes any Mountain West schools without taking the entire conference. Because it becomes much easier to move when you don't have a media rights deal that you are tied to. Because then you don't have to pay an exit fee. And the logistics are a heck of a lot simpler, and it's easy to look at making a conference move. That's the biggest difference here that I frankly am not entirely clear. I didn't do a straw poll through the Associated Press on how many people understand that concept, but I get that question or that comment quite a bit here on the show of, well, it's just like the Pac-12 in the same spot. Nah, it's a lot more like the Big 12. You're losing your two flagship brands, but a lot more remains and has the ability to remain. Now, there was going to be a 10-team Pac-12 that I think could have had a place in the college football landscape. Would it have been as successful as Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten? No. Would it have been as stable as what the new Big 12 teams are finding, Colorado, Utah, and the Arizona schools? Also probably not. Cal and Stanford found their way into the ACC because, well, that was an option. It was available. They took it, and it was, really hard to pass up at that point when you're in a 4-team conference. I think the stability of the ACC is going to mirror that of the Big 12, where you lose these brands, you take a hit. You take a hit branding-wise, you take a hit from a television rating-wise. You've added schools, but you have not added schools that are at the same level. There is no program, even close to Texas or Oklahoma, that the Big 12 has added in the last several years. Doesn't mean they haven't added good schools. Utah, great program. Though once Kyle Whittingham retires, which is probably after this season, we'll see if Morgan Scalley can keep it going. Arizona, good team, but are they a great program? Not historically. They have a lot of ebbs and flows, ups and downs. BYU, they've had moments, but again, they rise and fall quite a bit. Oklahoma, when they are right, in the Big 12, perennial conference favorite and college football playoff team. Texas, when they are right, perennial conference contender and college football playoff team. A lot of programs in the Big 12 can be right, can be in a good place, and not be at that level. The same applies to the ACC. You have programs like, take NC State or Virginia Tech, for instance. If either of those teams go 9-3 this year, and all 3 losses come in conference play, like if NC State beats Tennessee in week 2, but then has 3 conference losses, which is, feasible, possible. Crazier things have happened in college football. So they aren't technically a conference title contender because they'd have 3 losses, and it's unlikely that if you have 3 league losses, you're going to get into the conference championship game. Is that NC State having a disastrous season? No, it's just not quite hitting their ceiling this year. I think you have a lot more programs like that in the Big 12 or in the ACC as you had in the Big 12, which is why stability is not presently something the ACC has because of all this uncertainty and the unknowns and such. But if FSU and Clemson leave and there's a big settlement that gets kicked back to the conference and they can disperse amongst the teams to actually increase the revenue that their athletic departments can fund themselves at, then you have a situation where you look kind of like the Big 12. You've added 3 schools to get to that certain number so that the ACC can't vote to, dissolve itself by 2025, which is not going to happen. And then you just look at those schools and say, well, SMU, they've got a bunch of money. Can they really get to the upper tier of the conference? That's kind of what the Big 12 is asking about UCF right now. I mean, I think the Pac-12 additions make the Big 12 in a stronger position than the ACC, but are they comparable? Are they similar? Yes, and I think the trajectory is the reason for that. So the media rights and then just the overall landscape of the conference, I think, are what make the ACC more likely to go the route of the Big 12 than of the Pac-12. That and the media rights thing is really, really the biggest factor there that gives it some inherent stability when you're talking about how certain their stability, not stability, how certain their survivability is as a conference. And I think it's perfectly fair to ask the question to say, are they going to be able to do this? They need to do Y. Can they do that? But that's the way that landscape falls for me. Is they're not going to have a readily made. There's a path to the league imploding. I just, reading the tea leaves and the landscape, I do not see that right now. I'm sure everybody in the comment section will agree 100%. That's the nature of YouTube comments, is uniformity and just universal agreement across the board. So I look forward to seeing that again, as is our usual arrangement here on the show. So the Big 12 media poll came out, and Colorado was picked 11th, and that got people all sorts of hot and bothered and such. And the more you look at it, the harder it is to place them that much higher. But then again, there are some teams towards the top of the Big 12 that I look at and say, it might be a little, just a little bit high. We'll talk about that next with Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12. And a hot take that I've got that I don't think is ridiculously hot. Neither does Vegas, by the way. I don't think it's insanely hot, but some people might. All coming up next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. USA. Big 12 preseason media poll is out. I've got a hot take for you because that is Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. My hot take, Drake, is that Arizona and UCF are going to win the same number of games. How do you react to that?
I think that UCF at 8 could be a school that finishes at 4. I think the Arizona at 5 could be a school that finishes at 8. I have a very strong opinion that Arizona in year 1 under a new regime and still keeping a good core of their roster together. T-Mac namely, no feet is the big conversation. T-Mac may be the most explosive receiver coming into the Big 12 next year. I think that Arizona still has a whole lot more to prove than Utah under Kyle Whittingham. and that will be reflected in their record. Them having the same record as UCF is not that shocking to me, because I think UCF, the recruiting hotbed, where they Gus Malzahn, a guy who has won national championships as an OC, been as a head coach, has KJ Jefferson, an SEC caliber quarterback that at one time felt like a top 3 arm, or at least top 3 weapon in that league at the quarterback position, who fizzled out last year under Dan Enos. There's lore there that if he can get the best of KJ Jefferson out of him, he's a top 3 quarterback in a good QB class in the Big 12 this season. I like where UCF sits. They have, to me, a very high ceiling for where the Big 12 put them at 8. I think Texas Tech is kind of in the same range there with, they're at 9. They could finish at 4, and I wouldn't be shocked. Give me a yes. What was it, a C or no they used to do on give me a C for UCF and Arizona could very well finish with the same record. I can't push back on that.
Yeah, so I think this media poll is so interesting because you look at it and like Colorado is at 11, or UCF is at 8, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. And then you look at the teams that are ahead of them, and you're going, wait a minute. Who are you just like automatically putting X team in front? Like Texas Tech is lower than you would think for a team that has dark horse Big 12 championship aspirations, and I think realistically so. You have a young, talented quarterback with a now somewhat experienced head coach in that environment. You have that quarterback has starting experience, and this is going to be his first chance to take the reins for the entire season. And that's a lot different than what you have with a lot of young quarterbacks across the country where, Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, for instance, or Jackson Arnold, they've played one game. Baron Morton has seen college football action. He's not going to be brand new to it. But then when you look at Texas Tech, and I like the transfer portal offseason that Texas Tech has had this year. I think they brought in some really, really nice pieces. I look at who's above and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Am I just automatically jumping them over Arizona? Am I automatically dropping down Iowa State? I don't know, kind of like Iowa State. I mean, goodness gracious, I almost feel trepid in saying anything bad about Iowa State, lest Josh Pate figure out that I said it and I get doxxed publicly on his show. So he wouldn't actually do that, at least I don't think. But that's where I come back to. This conference is the deepest in the country for its conference championship run. It's not the deepest for the number of playoff teams. I think it's a one-bid league. It's not the deepest for the number of top 10 capable programs or teams this year. But this conference championship race is the most open to me. And that was the second thing that I thought when I saw the Big 12 preseason media poll.
Yeah, here's something that I've been telling a lot of people, and I don't believe that I can overstate this. I know that you, Jim, in Des Moines really love your college football, and you love that Iowa is in the Big 10, and that you don't have to deal with the Big 12 like Iowa State does, point and laugh. Well, guess what? When you paid rent last week, when you bought that new TV because your old TV got struck by lightning and the warranty was out of whack, you didn't use the money that Iowa got for being in the Big 10. You don't get like, oh, wow, my school's going to a new conference. We're going to make way more money. If Oklahoma goes 7-5 this season, you didn't see a dime out of that, and your viewing experience was worse than it would have been going 11-1, going to Arlington and winning a Big 12 championship. That is what I, as a fan of college football, want. Now, us as analysts, we get to talk about the ins and outs, the TV deals, and the revenue. But if you are a casual viewer here and you're going, I'm an Arkansas fan, I'm a Mississippi State fan, we're in the SEC, sucks for you, your viewing experience going 5-7 sucks. I would rather be West Virginia with the idea you can go 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, and win any given weekend. Have a hyper-competitive conference. Now, as we know, parity does not sell. People do not watch these games. If Cincinnati somehow goes...
I do. I will be watching these games. You'll be watching these games.
I am the sicko that if we turn around in week 10, and Arizona State's playing against week 11, Arizona State's playing BYU, and they're both 7-win teams at that point, like, I have vested interest in that. I can't wait. Everybody else in the country is going, oh, Arizona State, BYU, they don't really care. But I'm the sicko that's signing up for like, oh, wow, which of these two teams could be last year's West Virginia? And for me, Spencer, what that does for this league is gives an entertaining product every weekend. Anyway, I could legitimately see West Virginia go out and beat a team of the caliber of a Utah or Oklahoma State by 15 one weekend, and the next weekend come out and lose to an Iowa State by 21. And you go, yeah, well, that's the Big 12. And I don't think that's a bad thing for fans of the Big 12.
I'm glad you brought up Oklahoma State because I think them and Arizona are the two teams that, if I were to reshuffle, if they gave me a vote for the Big 12 preseason media poll, which they didn't, kind of hurtful, but that's okay. If I had one, those are two teams that I felt might be a touch high for different reasons. Arizona, new coaching staff and a roster that is not at the same level where it was a year ago, has a decent core, but it's just has lost a lot of starters, and I don't know that I'm in love with what they've brought in, and I don't know what Brent Brennan can do against Power 4 head coaching. There are a lot of really, really good coaches in the Big 12. And then I look at Oklahoma State and incredibly high floor. I mean, them in Utah. You talk about high floor programs, like incapable of bottoming out. Those two teams, as long as those two head coaches are there. And the Kyle Whittingham news, we're not getting to that today, but that's a whole other ordeal. Oklahoma State with Alan Bowman at quarterback, though.
Yeah.
That was the other team. I felt okay. Maybe they would go down a couple slots, because this is, to me, the deepest quarterback conference in the country. And if you're rolling with Bowman there, I'm just like, I can't get behind you there. Like, I know they proved people wrong last year and played for the conference championship game. Yeah. And then in that game, we saw how far away they actually were from being a conference title contender.
I get it. We can't go play the quarterback battle where you go, well, Colorado's got a better quarterback than Oklahoma State. They must be a better team. Colorado has the best overall player in the Big 12 in Travis Hunter, because he makes up two positions and is a freak athlete, and possibly the best quarterback in the country in Shedeur Sanders this season. That doesn't make Colorado a Big 12 championship contender. But to me, it makes them more dangerous when you talk, where could that ceiling be if those two guys get, how much of an impact can they make in the Big 12? Alan Bowman is not that. He took a hiatus from college football for 2 years to go be an on-field coach at Michigan. He was never a quarterback at Michigan. He just stood there with a helmet and the clipboard and helped anybody else who was actually the quarterback at Michigan.
His mastery of offensive schemes and X's and O's has to be higher than any other quarterback, and that's a non-zero part of playing the position. I'll grant him that.
It's true. And age is a factor here for Bowman, who's 27 now, and the idea of bringing him in Oklahoma State was not for him to start. It was, we've got three guys who are going to rotate until we get our ish rocked by South Alabama, and then we probably got to figure this one out. They elect Bowman quarterback, and he's just safe. He's the safe option. He's like the Big 12's version of A.J. McCarron, where you're like, yeah, he's not going to blow you away. He's just kind of going to go out there and do. And maybe he'll be a really good asset in the UFL one day. That seems like Alan Bowman's career path here.
Can we pick a quarterback that
hasn't won a national championship? He's the Big 12, the Big 12 version of the truck stop. AJ McCarron. It's Alan Bowman.
I mean, I still watched AJ McCarron in college growing up and thought, yeah, I'd take him as my team's backup quarterback. I do not feel that way about Alan Bowman.
So the teams that are around Oklahoma State, from Cam Rising to Avery Johnson, and from Fafita to Daniels to even Rocco Becht or Garrett Green or KJ Jefferson or Baron Morton, or that list kind of goes on.
It's loaded. It's so good.
Yeah. Even Garrett Green's freaking solid. And then you go to Colorado with Shedeur Sanders at 11. Baylor's got Daquan Finn, who was the MAC Player of the Year and start out at the Manning thing or whatever they did. Like I still think I take Daquan Finn based off his film than, run-of-the-mill Alan Bowman. And maybe I'm not giving Alan Bowman enough credit here. Sorry, Oklahoma State. But if your quarterback determines your ceiling, and sometimes that's the case in a deep quarterback conference, don't like that for the Cowboys.
I think your quarterback can both set your floor. In the case of Arizona, it can also limit your ceiling in the case of Oklahoma State. Yep. So, do you have a 10-second reaction to Colorado being 11th?
Good. They're not better than TCU, not better than Texas Tech, and they are better than Baylor, Cincinnati, Houston. Cool.
11th. Well, I think it's a little bit low. Drake Toll locked on Big 12.
You're 10 seconds. Who you going to put them above? TCU, Texas Tech?
TCU, yes. Probably just TCU.
Yeah, all right. 10. Good for you. Oh, you got them. Wow, good thing you didn't vote, man. Really want to change things.
Well, I might have had some other teams. I might have had some other teams lower, but UCF was ahead of them too, right?
Yeah.
You could vote Colorado ahead of UCF. I wouldn't think it's necessarily insane or crazy. Kind of like every segment we've ever done together.
Revoke your credentials. That's fine.
Okay. Well, I'd have to get a credential first. Drake Toll locked on Big 12. Appreciate it.
Love you.
We're staying in the Big 12, by the way, next, because Arizona State, if ASU is going to be, as Drake put it, the West Virginia of this year's Big 12, what game do they absolutely positively have to win? That's coming up next. Before we get to the Sun Devils, we're getting to Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, which is better for you. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% on last-minute deals for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you are looking for. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, slowest price, guaranteed. Arizona State picked last in the Big 12 preseason media poll. I find that to be a little preposterous. So does Richie Bradshaw. Locked On Sun Devils joining me here on the show. So ASU picked 16th of 16 teams. Look, if I'd had a ballot, that's not where I would have them. I think ASU has the opportunity to make some legitimate noise in that they beat a team where you go, wait, they beat who? They did what now? Like, ASU, to me, is pushing to be a bowl team this year, and that is not a last-place finisher in the Big 12, as deep as it is.
They are so much better than people realize. This is a team that they lost 3 big players. You lose Jaden Rashada, Elijah Badger, BJ Green. That's about as brutal as it's going to be. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to lose players outside of quarterback, you lost it at the 2 positions that you could afford to. ASU is ridiculously deep at receiver. Look out for Jordan Tyson this year. He is going to be a beast. Defensively, you replace BJ Green with Prince Dorbaugh and with Clayton Smith, 2 guys who I would not be surprised if they were all conference teams. Maybe not first team, but second team, third team, honorable mention, especially Clayton Smith. I am super high on the former 5-star recruit. But this team is well built, too. The secondary is very deep. Safety has a lot of talent. Linebacker has a lot of talent. Running back is insane. Cameron Scannaboo, Raleek Brown, Alton McCaskill. Some of the other guys that they've built that backfield with. The offensive line is really deep. I understand, Spencer, you're coming off of consecutive 3-win seasons, but if you compare the 3-win season from 2022 to the 3-win season from 2023, it's night and day different. ASU was in 4 dogfights last year that they could have potentially won, with Oklahoma State, Washington, who went to the national championship game, Cal, and Colorado. You could have swung and won those games, and you're suddenly 7-5. ASU is not going 3-9 this year. They are going bowling this year, and I venture to say they're going to be in like that second tier, right in the middle of the Big 12 between the powerhouses and the cellar teams. They're going to be much better than 16. And I said on my podcast, and I'll say here too, if they finish last place in the conference, I'll shave the beard.
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. But I think you're safe. I think.
Oh, I know I'm safe.
Now it's bold when you actually have facial hair. As people can see on YouTube, there is not an ounce of facial hair on this face, nor will there ever be, because I would look ridiculous. I have to continue to strive for, as Peyton Manning was told by Ron Burgundy, a succulent baby lamb. So
I can't pull off clean shaven. You got it.
I do. I got it down enough. Anyway, so when you look at Arizona State's schedule, it's not a cakewalk. Like, let's make that absolutely clear. Their win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, is 4.5. I like that over because I do think they will at least push to be a bowl team. And I really like what you said about the 3-9s not being the same, because one was a transition year in which you fired Herm Edwards after a loss at home to Eastern Michigan. Sean Aguano took over, and it was a mess. But last year, they went 3-9, still running with a walk-on at quarterback. By the end of the year, they were snapping the ball to a tight end and a running back. Like, they didn't even have a chance. And from a 30-foot view, or a 30,000-foot view, I think is the expression, you look at Jaden Rashada leaving and going, oh, they couldn't keep a really talented guy. I think that says more about what Sam Levitt brings to the table than what Jaden Rashada, isn't. Like, oh, is he not as good? No, I think Sam Levitt just had the better spring, and that's what all the reports have indicated.
He flat out beat him out. And the thing that's funny to me is Jaden Rashada was a really high 4-star kid. Sam Levitt was also a 4-star recruit in the same recruiting cycle. It's not like they're replacing him with like some no-name kid. Sam Levitt is a very talented quarterback who can make a lot of throws. He's someone that is able to be a little bit nimble in the backfield, extend the plays with his legs. He's got it. Like, I'm not saying the upside is Jaden Rashada, because I think we can all agree Jaden Rashada has some ridiculously high upside. But Sam Levitt is still a talented quarterback, somebody who, in a Kenny Dillingham system, in a Marcus Arroyo system, their offensive coordinator, I think are going to find more success than people realize. And again, the supporting group he's got around him. He's got a great run game. He's got tons of receivers. The tight end room, I'm not sold. There's some interesting guys there. Offensive line looks great. This should be an offense that is going to be leaps and bounds ahead of where they were last year. Sam Levitt could be the reason why.
Yeah, I will say, I'm not wild about the Marcus Arroyo addition as offensive coordinator.
Oh, I love it.
No, I think if you talk to Oregon fans, they won't have glowing reviews.
Sure.
But Dillingham being there makes that concern lessen for me substantially, because Dillingham has proven everywhere he's been, good offensive coach, good offensive mind. When you go to Arizona State's schedule, Richie, what I've been looking at here on the show, the most important singular games, not the biggest games, but the most important games for a team to have the sort of season they aspire to attain this year. For me, that game is the Big 12 opener at Texas Tech, because the next two games, yes, they are at home, but Kansas and Utah, that feels like a bridge Arizona State is not ready to cross. Texas Tech on paper is a better football team. I have higher hopes for them than I do the Sun Devils. If ASU goes into Lubbock and walks out with a win right there, I think the tone and tenor in that locker room, I think the narrative around this team changes immensely, because they should have at least 2 wins. They could have 3. Mississippi State is a game you're playing at home. They're in a rebuild with Jeff Lebby taking over in his first year. Like, that's not a very good football team. It's not going to be an easy game to win because you have an SEC roster, even if it's at a lower level. But if you take care of Wyoming and Texas State, which they should be able to, whether or not you beat Mississippi State, I think that Texas Tech game is how you kind of put the rest of the league on notice, and you send a message within your own locker room of, hey, we can be something here. We can achieve what people didn't think we could. That's why I look at Texas Tech as the most important game. What do you think?
I'm not going to say the Territorial Cup. That's low-hanging fruit. It's arguably the most important game every year. To me, I agree with you. It's Texas Tech. It's your opening game to the Big 12. You have some history with Texas Tech in recent years. There's an opportunity to establish a new rivalry within the Big 12. That's another task, Spencer, that you're going to be looking towards now, is branching out from what was the Pac-12 with Utah, Colorado, and Arizona, who you have rivalries with. You want to start creating more rivalries that will get the attention of recruits and the media and everything in the nation, so they want to tune in. Like in 3 or 4 years, they might go, Arizona State and Texas Tech, they built nice little programs. We should have them on a primetime slot, or not a primetime, but like one of those, like, hey, this is maybe a place that we send game time or game day to, kind of thing. You want to be able to establish a rivalry like that, and Texas Tech opening up your Big 12 debut, I think that's a great opportunity. The other game that I'm looking at is Oklahoma State. This is the 3rd straight year you've played them. You got your butt handed to you in 2022. Surprise, surprise. Last year, you could have beat them. You were right there. There's an opportunity for you to do so. This is same thing as Texas Tech, opportunity to establish a new rivalry. And this would be with one of the upper better teams in the Big 12.
Upper tier, is that what you were looking for?
Yes, upper tier. Thank you. this is a chance to establish a new rivalry. I would say Texas Tech, Oklahoma State are my most important games. UCF at home, that's kind of like, where are you at in the Big 12? Are you top half or lower half? But make me pick one. I'd go Texas Tech as well.
Yeah, I think it's the 16th thing. Like, to me, the last place team in the Big 12 is Houston. I think they have the toughest situation to deal with, and they could next year be where ASU is this year, but Kenny Dillingham was there a year ago. He's got a culture established. He's got some players on the roster. He's got a great defensive coordinator. I think as long as Sam Leavitt, shows that he did win that starting job for a reason that, has to do with how he performs on the football field, I think Arizona State at least pushes to be a bowl team. I think last place is ridiculous, but that Texas Tech game, that's not an easy place to win. They should have knocked off Oregon last year, and the Ducks squeaked one out. So it is going to be a tough game to be sure, but gosh almighty, these games are getting ever closer. Richie Bradshaw, Locked on Sun Devils, wrapping up the week. Richie, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Sorry to do a little plug. If you haven't subscribed to Locked on Sun Devils, we're trying to get to 1,000 before the season starts.
Get him over there. Get him over the hump.
I am not biased for 80% of the podcast, and the other 20% is a little bit biased. I'm not gonna lie. But
you know what? Fans for a team wouldn't have it any other way, and you know what? Exactly. We wouldn't either here at the show. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a great holiday weekend and a wonderful rest of your day.